And I want to say just a brief thing about this book. I love old bookstores. Yeah, I'm an exciting guy to be around. And many years ago, I went into a bookstore and picked up a book, and it changed my life. I've written many medical articles. I practiced medicine for 32 years, but I never thought of myself as a creative person. And after 5 years and many editings, this book, The Memphite Equation, occurred. And I'll be brief here, but we're having a book signing event April 29th, downtown library at 2 p.m. And we hope many of you will adventure to come out. Let me say just one brief thing about this book. In 1947, along the Dead Sea, they found many religious documents, really scrolls, and they were well preserved in vases. In 1952, they found another. This one was metal, copper that is. And these scrolls date back beyond the Old Testament, really 3,000 years to the Old Kingdom, the golden era of Egypt, the 18th dynasty. And the last thing, the copper scroll is really not a religious document. It is an enigma wrapped in a puzzle, and it speaks of politics, military, and wealth. The kind of wealth that would make King Solomon mine a mere coin for a movie. And I'll stop there because I tend to talk on. But please, April 29th, 2 p.m., downtown library, and I really will emphasize this. Thank you.
A lot of the stories that I tell come from Ghana and West Africa. And I'm going to teach you a couple of sayings from Ghana. And one practice is to say, go. Now, when the teacher or the one seeking your attention says, go, you answer, Amen. So let me hear you. Go, you say, Amen. Let me hear you. Go. Amen. Go. Amen. Go. Amen. And what that's saying is, I'm calling for your attention, and you're saying, I'm ready to receive what you have to offer. Now, like I said, most of the stories that I tell are West African tales. But this time, I'm going to do something different. I'm not going long ago. Well, yes, I am. But I'm not going far away. The first thing I have to tell you is my name, because my name is important to my story. My name is Leslie Carolyn Cosby Edwards, Ya Fatima. And all of my names have to do with my history. Leslie is my mother's name, and she grew up right down the street on 4th Street, as did my grandmother and me. Carolyn is my middle name for my Aunt Carolyn. My Aunt Carolyn is the one who raised my mother, because my grandmother had 7 children and she needed some help, and Carolyn was the oldest. And by the way, there's a school way down at the other end of 5th Avenue. It's called Carolyn B. Parker Elementary School. Used to be J.J. Findley. Things changed. That's my Aunt Carolyn. Cosby, that's my daddy's name. He used to have a dental office on 6th Street right across from the police station. Edwards is my husband's name, the love of my life. Ya is my Ghanaian name because I was born on Thursday, and that's the name for girls or women born on Thursday. Fatima is my Arabic name given to me when my husband lived in Lebanon. So, like I said, not too long ago and not too far away, this is the story of Edna Jean. This is also the story of a changing times and changing neighborhood. Now, Edna Jean grew up in the 1950s and the 1960s. And I'll save the rest of the introduction for the end because I think you'll figure it out. Now, Edna Jean heard about this man, and his name was Martin Luther King. And all the grown people were talking about Dr. Martin Luther King and what he did and what he meant. But to Edna Jean, Dr. King meant three things: bathrooms, buses, and lunch. Now you see, Edna Jean was a little girl in the 1950s, and she was a good little girl. She always did what her mama and her grandmama said to do. But one of the things they told her was, you have to go to the bathroom before we go out. Anytime we go any place, you go to the bathroom. Now, Edna Jean wanted to be a good little girl, but she said, I don't have to go to the bathroom. And she'd suck her teeth because she wouldn't let mama or grandmama see her. Because see, what Edna Jean didn't know was that when she went out, like when they went downtown, Edna Jean couldn't go in the bathrooms. She couldn't go in the store bathrooms or the restaurant bathrooms. She had to wait till she got home. Sometimes they'd have one with a sign on it said colored, and that bathroom would be nasty. Mama didn't want her to go in that bathroom. So they would make her go to the bathroom. Now, they went walking, because see, Edna Jean's daddy didn't have a car at that time. So they would walk, and it wasn't too far, and on Saturdays it was fun because they would go downtown. And downtown they go shopping. They went to this store called Wilson's Department Store. And then their grandmama went to this store called Jay's Dress Shop. Sometimes she could find a dress there. Most of the time she had to have her clothes made. Now what Edna Jean liked was the 5 and dime store. And that's where she could spend her little money and buy things like bracelets. Oh, Edna Jean loved bracelets. And when she went, she could spend her own money. And so Edna Jean, she started to grow up, and her daddy got a car. And when he got a car, they went on long trips. They went all the way to Chicago, because that's where he was from. But see, they had to pack a lunch. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing. When Edna Jean went into this 5 and dime store, she always wanted to go over by the lunch counter. I told you it was about lunch. And her grandmama and her mama said, come away from there, girl, you can't go over there. Because see, they wouldn't serve lunch or anything else to little brown girls like Edna Jean. And all she wanted to do was get one of those milkshakes that they had in the glasses, looked like a flower vase, and it had a spoon attached to a straw and had a cherry on the top. Oh, she knew exactly what it looked like. But her mama and grandma would shush her away from there and say, you can't go over there. Because little, what they used to call colored or Negro girls like Edna Jean couldn't eat at that lunch counter. Now, I was about to tell you about the trips they took to Chicago. And so mama and grandmama, because she would go too, they packed a lunch and they had this big cooler in the trunk. And in the trunk, they had drinks and they had stuff to make sandwiches and all kinds of things. But Edna Jean wanted to stop at the hamburger place that she saw on the road. But they couldn't go in there. And then Edna Jean said, I got to go to the bathroom. And you know what they did? They always carried toilet paper. And so what they did was they would stop, pull over to the side of the road, open the back door, open the front door, and Edna Jean had to squat and go to the bathroom right between the car doors. And then she'd use the toilet paper that they brought with her and wash her hands with soap and water that Mama brought for that. But she couldn't stop at those restrooms along the way. And she couldn't stop at those lunch counters along the way. Now on the way back, they passed this place. They had signs all over the place. And it was called South of the Border. Now that looked like a fun place to stop. And Edna Jean wanted to stop there because they had those big Mexican hats and looked like they had music and they were dancing and stuff. But no, they couldn't stop there. They had to wait till they got to where one of Daddy's friends lived, or one of Mama's friends lived, or one of Grandmama's friends lived. So they go from Chicago to Pittsburgh, then they go to all the way to Nashville, and then they go to Atlanta and stay with one of their friends, not near a hotel or motel could they stay. Well, time passed and Edna Jean got a little bit older. She was a teenager. She was about 13 years old. And they started having meetings down the corner from where Edna Jean lived. And there was this church. It was called Mount Carmel Church. And when they went there, they went down in the basement and they had meetings. To see, what they were going to do was they were going to sit in. She said, what's that? They're just going to go to some place and sit in, like the Five and Dime and some other places. And they wanted the children to do that because if they got arrested, they wouldn't be charged. Now see, Edna Jean had been watching all this on the little bitty TV that they had in the house. This TV was so little and black and white, and it had 4 skinny little legs, so skinny you didn't think they could hold up the TV. But she saw people making speeches. This man I told you was about Martin Luther King. He was making speeches, and he was talking about things Edna Jean didn't know nothing about. And she saw children just like her, and they were being beaten and fire hosed just for trying to go into the restaurants. So Edna Jean, when she went to these meetings at Mount Carmel Church, they taught her how to hover down and protect yourself if they tried to beat you or something. And she wasn't scared, so it was time to go and sit in at one of the restaurants not too far away. And when she went to sit down, and she thought she was going to get one of those nice strawberry milkshakes. But no. You know what happened? They called the police. And when the police came, they arrested Edna Jean and all the other children. And they took them to the jailhouse. But at least they didn't put them in jail. Because see, funny thing is, the police officer that saw Edna Jean, he said, I know you and I know your daddy. And he called Edna Jean's daddy, and he came and picked her up and took her home. Now she had to go to court, and she didn't get charged, but she wasn't supposed to go on any more trips, and she had to stay in town for 6 months. Didn't bother Edna Jean, but things started changing. After this man, Martin Luther King, started making all these speeches about black people and Negroes, they called them, and little black boys and little white boys and girls walking, holding hands. Edna Jean didn't know nothing about that because she didn't know no little white boys or little white girls. Everybody she knew was what they called Negro. And everybody who lived around her, well, she said, that's fine. But the thing that changed was, I told you, it's about bathrooms. They could go in the bathrooms downtown. And lunch, they could go to the lunch counters. Edna Jean didn't ever get nothing from that Five and Dime. But you know, they did go to South of the Border, and it was such a disappointment. It was nothing like what they said in the signs. It was just a rundown old motel. But you know what? Edna Jean was happy. At least she could go. At least she could say she didn't want to go. And that's the story of Edna Jean and bathrooms and buses and lunch. This was my story and my experience. And this is why Fifth Avenue was important. Because all the things that you couldn't do downtown, you could do on Fifth Avenue. You could go to the bathroom if you had to. You could get a delicious milkshake. You could get a wonderful hamburger if that's what you wanted. And you could even find places to stay. And so that's Edna Jean's story. Thank you.
In the South, there is a tradition of what they call the root man or the root woman. And Pleasant Street community had their own root woman. Her name was Miss Juliet. Now, many might have tried to. This was the thing about going to the root person. You may have gone to church and scoffed about hoodoo and voodoo on Sunday. But most of the time, those people went to the root man or the root woman on Saturday night.
This is a Pleasant Street shout out, y'all, and I'm here to run it down. Let me inform you, if you don't know, the importance of growing up across town. Now, back in the day when my mom was young and running with her crew, this was a black business mecca with food and music and lots to do. Now, we all know that you were never ever supposed to go across 6th Street, but they were bad kids, so they looked both ways and they slyly began to creep. There were Cato burgers, pork chops for Moms, and a sausage sandwich from Mr. Fred's Grill. And when they all grew up and could stay out past dark, they ran the streets seeking fun and big thrills. They stopped at Red's 2 Spot, Mr. Woody's Shop, the Beer Tavern, and the Wigwam Lounge. During the holidays, you'd find everyone at Fletcher's chilling while they were home in town. I cannot forget lying in my bed listening to the grown folks shine and trip. I learned way too much about their business from the sounds of the Sunset Strip. As for me and mine, I have to recall when they turned 5th Ave into a waterfall. Remember getting beatings from all the moms? One hard smack from each. They didn't mean you no harm. You better not do nothing. You better not mess up. I bet Duncan Brothers will come and get your butt. Oh, you still talking? I thought I told you to shut up. Say one more word and I'm calling chestnuts. Don't get me wrong, we did more than party. Pleasant Street's rich in history. Look up Union Street School and Aquin Jones to see how we rolled academically. We had Dr. Cosby and Dr. Banks practicing medicine up the block. Mr. Oscar Gilbert repaired our shoes, and Miss Saunders kept our clothes looking hot. In Pleasant Street, God reigns supreme. We're a spiritually gated community. Mount Pleasant, Mount Carmel, Greater Bethel, and Friendship gave the word to those willing to receive. I would go on, but I'll stop now, and I'll let your memories take flight. I'll close with this till the day I die. I thank God I'm a Pleasantite. Ashe, Ashe.